So one night I'm watching the 25 Years of Terror Halloween documentary, and there was a portion of this that talked about a Michael versus Pinhead film. Now, I heard rumblings about this beforehand seeing this, but when I saw Clive Barker not only say yes, this was something that was happening, but also that John Carpenter was supposed to be involved, I was pretty taken aback. So in today's episode of the Unmade Halloween sequels, we're going to see how close that this film actually was to getting made, and what eventually put this project on a halt permanently. Like most episodes of this series, we'll start from the beginning of where things really took off. Now, most may suggest that Freddy vs. Jason would be the big reason that something like this would happen, but in truth, this was an idea that predated even that film, more so into the 90s. There were treatments that floated around in the late 90s to put these two together. When writers realized that both Michael and Pinhead were under the same umbrella, it seemed like a no-brainer to do a movie like this. Hey, both of these guys are under the Dimension label right now. Oh my god, the fans would eat this up. But at that time, a lot of people were against the idea. One writer, Peter Atkins, when he heard about this, called the idea creatively bankrupt. I guess what he means by that is you've got two icons with great lores and stories, but we can't come up with an idea to have both respectively have just great sequels in their franchises. Instead, we have to just combine the two to make people say, ooh, ah, look what we're doing, we're combining the two. Remember this portion as we go on to the story. Doug Bradley was quoted before even Freddy vs. Jason came out when this idea was talked about being his biggest fear. He was not in favor of a movie like this happening, thinking, again, that would probably be something that was creatively bankrupt. But we'll see if he keeps that notion as this video goes on. Dave Parker would make the first real treatment for this film, called Hellraiser Halloween. The screenplay would then get simplified to being called Helloween. Now, this would not be the script that would get the furthest steppings into the story, but let's go over what Halloween was supposed to be. Parker's vision starts off messing with Michael's origins. Before Michael killed his sister in '63, a vagrant outside the house handed him the lament configuration. Young Michael opens it, and an evil Samhain spirit escapes and possesses Michael. He then goes into the house to kill his sister. Fast forward to present day, where characters are breaking into the Myers house. Some of these characters are from the Halloween series, and one of them is Christy from Hellraiser. Someone accidentally opens up the puzzle box that they have, and the Pinhead and Cenobites escape. They also find Michael Myers at his own house. A fight ensues. So this screenplay has Michael becoming possessed from an evil Halloween or Samhain Samhain spirit that was trapped inside the Cenobite lament configuration box. It's always trepidatious for Halloween fans when we mess with the origins of the story. And again, going from what John Carpenter had, making this simple story with no backstory, this changes all of that. Parker would try to present this idea to Dimension in 1998. They expressed no interest at the time. So it wouldn't be till a few years later when a movie called Freddy vs. Jason came out that Dimension were like, okay, you know what, this actually might be something worth exploring. Freddy vs. Jason is going to be this big successful thing, or it would at the time, and Dimension started taking notice pretty quick. Here comes the next script that got pretty damn close to being made. Josh Stolberg and Bobby Florsheim would create the treatment that almost was Halloween in Hell. The two would make their pitch to Mustafa himself in 2002. Halloween in Hell opens with a support group in Chicago for horror movie survivors. Most notable were Christy and Jamie Lloyd, but other horror movie survivors were going to be there too. Jamie Lloyd is sharing her story to everyone, explaining how the thorn curse has simply ruined her life. She also talks about how Michael hasn't found her in several months. Suddenly, in the meeting, Michael appears. Michael attempts to kill Jamie. Survivors try to jump in and help. Christy from Hellraiser herself tries to help and gets stabbed by Michael while simultaneously opening the lament configuration that she had in her possession. As the Cenobites show up, Christy taunts them one last time as she breathes her last breath. Pinhead, very annoyed that someone took what should have been his victim, vows revenge against the person responsible. That person responsible was Michael Myers. Having escaped Michael narrowly, Jamie Lloyd runs to a nearby hospital. Jamie has her own personal blood supply on hand at this hospital due to constant attacks from Michael. She gets a quick infusion of blood since she suffered some loss at previous attack. Nurse accidentally puts Jamie's private stock of blood into the general stock. This mistake causes 7 unfortunate people to get Jamie's cursed blood in them, making them direct targets of not only Michael, who is trying to stop his bloodline, but now Pinhead, who wants to stop all of Michael's bloodline. 6 of the 7 victims get wiped out. One 10-year-old named Betsy teams up with Jamie Lloyd to stay alive. The two soon learn there are over 100 lament configurations on Earth. While they can't be used to kill them, they can be used to trap them. They'll need to conjoin 2 lament configurations together in a very intricate way to do the task, which opens a portal to hell. The film will culminate with a big battle that everyone was excited to see. Michael versus Pinhead and his Cenobites. The shape decapitates several Cenobites before setting his sights on Pinhead himself. One shot was to see Michael push some of the nails deeper into Pinhead's head, giving out this excruciating yell and scream. It was going to be a sight to see. The battle nearly climaxes right about the time that Betsy and Jamie Lloyd are able to get those lament configurations open, trapping them into hell for eternity. It was somewhat unclear as to who was going to come out the victor. This probably would have been something that Dimension and Mustafa would have had to figure it out and hashed out. Dimension probably not having as much of a fight either way since they had the rights to both characters were probably a little bit more flexible on this. But Mustafa Akkad probably would have been a hard sell if anybody but Michael would have came out victorious in this big battle. Keep in mind that a few years beforehand, Daniel Farrance would give Mustafa Akkad this Halloween Bible, if you will, a book that would go over all the lore of Michael, knowing what would be out of bounds and what would be in bounds. Mustafa would have this book on hand during this time, and when he got the script for this film, put pen to paper with that Halloween Bible and learned that so many things would cross the list of not to-dos from the Daniel Farrance Halloween Bible book. Mustafa hated this idea. Simultaneously, though, Freddy vs. Jason would come out. This movie would make over $36 million on the opening weekend and be #1 for the following weekend. Back then, that was a big deal because movies were coming out all the time and people were flocking to the theaters in 2003. So for Freddy vs. Jason to be #1 2 weeks in a row was not something to just gawk at. This was a big deal. This had Miramax and Dimension's attention, and the Weinsteins were like, we have got to jump on board on this crossover stuff. This is a big hit. During this time, Clive Barker and John Carpenter would meet with Dimension to talk about the possibility of getting involved in this project. They both thought it would be a really fun idea and decided, hell yeah, let's do it. Things got really close to being done. The script was being looked at and worked on, all while John and Clive were set to get involved in it. They were this close, until one man expressed his opinion one last time. But before that, it's important to note that Doug Bradley, who a few years before thought that this would be his biggest fear, now that Clive Barker was involved, thought it was a really cool idea. It's potential that the script that was made for this film was something that he actually really enjoyed. To be fair, who wouldn't change their mind? As things ramped up, one man voiced his opinion louder than everybody. That man was Mustafa Akkad. Mustafa made it known that he had zero pleasure in doing an idea like this, and eventually wore down everybody. The idea of Michael versus Pinhead would be axed, and then sooner rather than later, we would just see the return of Michael in the remake, held by Rob Zombie. Not since then have we heard about a Michael versus Pinhead movie, and it's possible we'll never see a movie like this ever be made. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Well, that's up for you, the viewer, to decide. This was the deathbed of Michael vs. Pinhead in 2003, the film that will probably never happen. So I ask you, what are your thoughts on a movie like this? Do you think it could have worked? I guess half of it could depend on your thoughts on Freddy vs. Jason, seeing how that film was made and your thoughts on it. Me personally, I just can't see this. Especially since Pinhead is a person that doesn't really attack himself. He has Cenobites that do a lot of his bidding for him, which was present in the script that we read about. But still, I just feel like Michael would decimate most of these people, especially if we had the George P. Wilbur style Michael in this film as well. Rest in peace, George. We all miss you. So this was another episode of the Unmade Halloween sequels, Michael vs. Pinhead. I'd love to know your thoughts down below. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you soon with another Unmade Halloween sequel. Thank you to all of my Patreon supporters who make videos like this possible. To get behind the scenes photos, videos, music, private live streams, and more, you can subscribe to my Patreon for as little as $1 a month. Thank you very much.